Hello.
Hi. Well, I'm pleased to join you today.
Well, thank you for saying yes to the interview today. My name is Nicola. I am the creator of the podcast titled You're Worthless. Read that again, the juxtaposition of your very soul. Well, like we mentioned before, thank you very much for saying yes to the interview today. And as part of my ritual on my podcast, I'd like to read a bit of an introduction for our listeners today, and then we can get right into business. So, hey everyone, we have Duncan Bhaskaran Brown here with us. Now, his backstory. Some people say that Duncan can help you to go beyond alcohol, but that isn't it. Duncan will help you increase your energy, power up your productivity, improve your relationships, and enjoy the heck out of life. After 20 years of overdoing it, he cleaned up his act and trained with the world's most successful stop smoking service. But that wasn't enough. He studied at Cornell University, the Chartered Management Institute, and in the windowless room in Peterborough, but that wasn't enough. He wrote a couple of books, most recently, Real Men Quit, the armchair macho guide to beating booze and finding the life you want. But that wasn't enough. He started interviewing the sober superstars and conducting research projects which involved watching TV. Again, that wasn't enough. What would be enough? Maybe if alcohol free was the default, if sober was the new normal, and if alcohol stops destroying people. Maybe then Duncan will sit down with a mint tea and sci-fi novel and relax. Maybe. Wow, what an intro, Duncan. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks very much. I'm looking forward to having a bit of a conversation.
So, Duncan, I'd like to take the listeners down memory lane. What was it like? Can you share with us? What was it like growing up as Duncan Brown?
Wow. I think you can sum up my childhood quite neatly by one story. So I turned up to school one morning and my teacher said that he wanted us to write a poem. And I know that that would worry quite a lot of school children. It would probably strike fear into the heart of many of them. But I was quite excited because, I was really into Shakespeare at the time. Yep, I was one of the cool kids. And
Wow.
I got on with it. I started out with this poem. I wrote it out. It's like really, I enjoyed it. And then I took it up to the teacher and the teacher took one look at it and went, well, the spelling's rubbish. Your grammar's not very good and your handwriting's terrible. And I said, yeah, but that's not really important, is it? It's not the way you write, it's what you write. Look, I've used all of these literary devices like assonance and alliteration and metaphor and simile. And surely the quality of what I've written is far more important than my handwriting or a bit of punctuation or maybe the odd spelling mistake. And my teacher said, see me after school, Duncan.
Detention?
Exactly. The school was just not well suited to me. I think it didn't play well to my talents. And ultimately, what school wants to do is it wants you to be regulated and it wants you to fit into this nice little mold. And I don't do molds. It's not
Same.
me. So I found it very hard to sort of find a place that I could succeed in school and that I could kind of validate myself and feel like I was, worthwhile. I just didn't get that from school. And so I turned to other things.
You turn to other things. Okay. Now, shall we dive right into that? What are those other things?
Well, I started off quite young and I used that socially acceptable drug for 9-year-olds, chocolate.
Okay. Chocolate, you got me. 9-year-old. Okay, chocolate. Okay.
Yeah. So I found a bit of, well, what I thought was comfort in eating, cookies, chips, chocolate, all of that kind of stuff. And I know, most kids like that, but I think looking back on it, I did take it a little bit too far. But as I got a bit older, I discovered things like alcohol, and it was like, wow, this is just a much bigger hammer to hit that particular nail in with. So I started drinking, and it all seemed to be going very, very well. I was a bit socially anxious. Like I say, I didn't really know where I fitted in life. I found it difficult to talk to Well, I found it really difficult to talk to girls. That was the biggest problem in my life, basically. And
Well, thank you for being honest.
a couple of tins of lager, and it felt like I had more confidence. I was a lot funny. Even felt like I was better looking. So, when I started drinking, it seemed really, really good. It was very sociable. I wasn't really drinking that much, but as time went on, the amount I drank crept up. And the amount of people I drank with went down. So it stopped being social. It started being just more me sitting on my own drinking. And it got to the point where I was drinking a couple of bottles of wine on my own a night. And, I was miserable. That just was no fun at all.
How did Duncan go from drinking, smoking, and eating junk food to energy, focus, peace, and happiness?
So, on the outside, I was doing quite well. I was quite successful.
Functioning.
If you took a look at
Alcoholic.
well, yeah, but if you took a look at my life, you would have said, "Oh, Duncan's doing very well." I had senior leadership positions in local government. I had a very good-looking, if I do say so myself, girlfriend who we got married, and it all seemed to be, progressing really, really well. But I was miserable, and my wife and I, we decided that it was a good idea to start a family. Well, that was quite good fun. I mean, the trying bit was quite good fun. She got pregnant, and that was great.
You're funny. You're funny with the alcohol. You're funny. I can vouch for that.
Thank you. I've been practicing. So she got pregnant, and we were just like your typical kind of young parents. We were like optimistic. It was all going to be wonderful. It was all going to be great. And then she had a miscarriage, and everything fell apart. It
I'm
was
so
obviously
sorry.
incredibly hard for her, but I think what made it worse was I wasn't there for her. I wasn't there to help out. My response to stress, to difficult emotions, to the hard times was just to open a bottle of wine and disappear into myself. And that was absolutely not what she needed. And I think for a few months after that, I spent a lot of time thinking about what it was that I wanted from life. And I never put it nice and neatly. I never stood in front of the mirror at 4 a.m. with the moodily lit scene kind of thing, saying to myself, what do I want from life? Looking back on it now, I can see that I was basically asking myself this question, what do I want? Do I want another drink, or do I want to start a family? The good news is I made the right decision, and almost 9 months to the day after I stopped drinking, our daughter was born. And, when I stopped drinking, it had such a huge impact on me. I felt like I felt like a different person. I had so much more energy. My mood improved, and it improved quickly. I seemed to have a lot more time, had a lot more focus. My relationship with my wife improved massively. So, for the first 9 months of stopping drinking, it was great. It was fantastic. And then my daughter was born, and that was a whole other world of problems.
Yeah.
But good problems.
Okay. So you've been sober for how long? I'm curious.
It will be 9 months, 9 years at the end of the month.
Wow, that's
it's never really felt like work. It's always just felt like a blessing. So,
what businesses should do to ensure alcohol is not draining their people's productivity?
So I think a lot of businesses have got a very complicated, quite unhealthy relationship with alcohol. I mean, it does vary from industry to industry, but what we found is a lot of industries, there's a lot of socializing that goes on around alcohol. There's also a lot of, kind of almost pressing the clients. You have to take the client out for a drink, and then it becomes,
because we want to win the project.
Yeah, and it
we want to secure the account.
Yeah, it almost becomes part of the sales process that you have to take the clients to drink. And then unfortunately, there is this perception that if you don't drink at the same time, then people will think that you're untrustworthy. And that then makes drinking almost a part of your job. And then you can add to that all of the training, the conferences, the sales kickoffs, the away days. They all tend to revolve around alcohol. that's very unhealthy because alcohol has quite a big impact on certain aspects of productivity. Energy and focus, I think, are the two biggest ones. So just a couple of glasses of wine is enough to ruin your sleep. Basically, 2 glasses of wine will reduce the quality of your sleep by about 24%. And that's the
Oh,
deep sleep. That's the important bit of your sleep, where you lay down memories, where you actually kind of like grow and develop. So, just those 2 glasses of wine is having a big impact on their sleep. And then, of course, that has a knock-on effect on their energy. It has a knock-on effect on their mood. You can go into all of the effects that alcohol has on neurotransmitters like dopamine, GABA, and cortisol, and you can look at how that's impacting on people's mood. And again, it happens at a pretty low level. Just a couple of glasses is enough to throw all of those neurotransmitters out of whack. I mean, 2 glasses of wine will raise cortisol, which is the stress hormone. It will raise that by about 18%. So if you're encouraging your employees in any way to relax and de-stress by drinking alcohol, it's actually having the opposite effect. So I think as companies and organizations become more interested in employee well-being and start to understand how that has such an impact on productivity, I think they need to now take it one step further and start to understand that alcohol is one of the most important parts of well-being, yet it's one of the parts that we don't want to talk.
So what do you think then we should do? What are we replacing alcohol with?
Well, the thing is, you don't really need to replace it with anything. Most of the things that we enjoy about celebrations are to do with the celebrations themselves. So if, for example, we went out for dinner, I know there's a bit of a logistics implication in that because we're not exactly around the corner from each other, and I don't know what my wife would think. But anyway, if we went out for dinner, we'd be in a restaurant, so we'd be nice atmosphere, and we'd have people cooking the food for us and doing the washing up and waiting on us, so that would increase the relaxation. If it was in the evening, work for the day would be done, so it would be a social, relaxed occasion. As we are currently proving, I think we'd have a very interesting conversation. So we'd have a nice time, wouldn't we? And that is what people enjoy about socializing. The fact that, work for the day is done, they're in a relaxing, nice atmosphere, they've got somebody interesting to talk to. That's what people enjoy about socializing. The alcohol doesn't really add anything to it. In fact, if you drink more than a couple of drinks, it detracts from all of those things. So we don't need to replace alcohol. We just need to change our mindset. We need to start to understand that you can have as much fun. Actually, breaking news, you can have more fun without
alcohol. I want to go back to the part where actually it's the feeling that you attach with alcohol, right? Because there will be people who actually take alcohol only during special occasions. And I think that's fine. I don't know. What are your thoughts on that? And then, because I myself is that kind of person, and then it's more of like an achievement. Okay, I've achieved something in my milestone. Okay, then I have clink, a glass of wine or gin and tonic, and that's it.
You see, that is absolutely the way people should drink. The unfortunate problem is most people don't drink like that. There are people out there that do, like your good self. And that's what we try and encourage. Because I don't actually come along and say, look, you need to completely stop drinking, because that's not the answer for everybody. What we talk a lot about is low risk, high pleasure drinking. And it is exactly the kind of thing that you're talking about. And it's actually doing it on a special occasion. The problem is that most people don't drink for special occasions. Most people drink because it's Friday. Most people drink because there's some sport on. Most people drink because they happen to be with their friends. These are not special occasions, and alcohol doesn't really enhance that. And actually, if you dig into the science, the effects of alcohol are really well understood. I mean, they've been studied to death. And as your blood alcohol level rises, you get more of the negative effects. So if you have that first drink is going to be associated with effects like a sense of relaxation, internal warmth, and generally good feelings. But once you get past that first drink, level raises closer to the drink driving limit. And the reason why the drink driving limit is there is because it starts to impair your judgment, and it starts to defocus your eyes, and it starts to affect your coordination. So you start to get into the realms of these less desirable effects. And of course, if you take it a little bit further, then the coordination's really going to go. You're going to have problems walking. You're going to start speaking a lot louder. That's something most people don't realize about alcohol. It makes you talk really, really loud, partly because your hearing goes, and it completely and utterly switches off the prefrontal cortex, part of your brain that makes decisions.
I thought it was the music.
Well, yeah, that doesn't help, does it? But that's when you're starting to get into the immediate negative impacts of drinking, and then you get the associated negative impacts of drinking the next day. You also get into the territory where you're talking about the risks of long-term problems from drinking. Actually, all of the pleasure comes at the start from that first drink. The second drink doesn't increase the pleasure, it decreases the pleasure and increases the risks. So what we try and get people to understand is that low risk drinking is actually also high pleasure drinking. And if you're much more mindful about it, if you're much more aware of it, if you're very deliberate with your choice of drink, so instead of just drinking that thing you always drink, you spend, literally 30 seconds having a look at the menu and thinking about what you feel and then picking something that's right for that moment, you're going to enjoy that drink a lot more.
Yeah,
if you only drink when it's a special occasion, when it really enhances it, when you've got something to celebrate, when you're with people who, you haven't seen for a while and you really want to kind of celebrate being together, then it can really enhance the situation if you stick in that low risk, high pleasure area. But there are a lot of people out there who go a bit beyond the low risk area or a lot beyond the low risk area, and we want to help them find a new relationship with alcohol, whether that is getting it back into that low risk area, or whether that is taking a break, or actually deciding that enough is enough. So we don't tell people what to do, we just try and explain the information to them, because the science is pretty clear, and then help them make a decision as to what would be right for them.
Self-control, but it's so hard when it's easier said than done.
I think there are a couple of things about that. So most people drink in the evening, and a lot of people would go, well, yeah, that's kind of obvious, Duncan. Nobody drinks before work, do they? I mean, that's a main line to getting fired, isn't it? But part of the reason why most people drink in the evening is a phenomenon called decision fatigue, which has been quite well documented by people like Roy Baumeister and a lot of other psychologists. And what they found is that the more decisions you make, you basically wear out your decision muscle. Throughout the day, you're constantly making decisions. So you get up in the morning, you're thinking, what am I going to wear to work? Where did I leave my keys? Have I got enough time to press snooze one more time? What am I going to have for breakfast? What am I going to have for lunch? You haven't even left the house and you've already made a load of decisions. And then you get to work and you have to make other decisions like, should I do some work, or should I spend my time on Facebook? Should I punch my boss in the face? All of those kind of things. And you just get tired. And as the day goes on, you wear out your decision muscles, and by the end of the day, you often have decision fatigue.
Duncan.
Thank you. But by the end of the day, you're often pretty tired, and your decision, your ability to make decisions has been completely and utterly worn out, which is why people tend to drink alcohol later in the day. It's also why they tend to eat ice cream at about 9 o'clock, because they've worn out their decision muscles. So it's about understanding how the process works and, being kind of sensible with the decisions you make and automating some of them. I mean, I think, always eating the same thing for breakfast, largely, having a sort of a set of uniforms like Steve Jobs did. Why did he always wear the same clothes? It's because he wanted to spend his precious attention on creating world-changing gadgets rather than figuring out what to wear in the morning. So there are a lot of things you can do to improve that, and then, you're not wearing yourself out.
Wow. For me, after I'm done making decisions the whole day, I would get home and then just lie on my couch and then just sleep. If I happen to wake up by 9 p.m., then okay, I'll shower. But then if not, it's all the way to tomorrow morning. But again, not everybody's like that, because after, let's say you have a big meeting and then your teammates they come to you and say, "Hey, you did well today. Why don't we go out and celebrate? No, have dinner first, and then yeah, a couple of drinks, yeah, and then you get sucked into the whole thing. In the morning, you feel awful because number one, you already told yourself, okay, I'm gonna have a couple of drinks, but then no, you did not manage to obey whatever it is that you promised yourself with to do or not to do. And then number three, you have a bad hangover. So that is it defeats the whole purpose of celebrating
Yeah,
in the
and
first place.
what you have described is a cycle that a lot of people live. So
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason, either they're stressed or they want to celebrate, they have a drink, and
Yeah.
you don't even have to talk about like so much, that you get
Mhm.
a bad hangover in the morning. 2 or 3 drinks. I'm just a bit stressed. I'll open a bottle of wine, maybe drink a little bit more of it than you wanted to. But you wake up the next morning, you're a bit tired, your mood is low, your concentration's a bit off. It's a bit harder to make those decisions about what to wear and about what to have for lunch and all of that kind of stuff. So you get into work, maybe you get in on time, maybe you just squeeze in on time, but you're not exactly starting the day on the front foot, are you? And it rarely ever gets better. And all of those decisions just seem to be a bit harder. So by the end of the day, you're kind of stressed and you think, I'm stressed. I better open a bottle of
Again,
wine. And you
yeah.
have a couple of glasses and then you wake up the next morning and you just keep doing that. And it's this kind of stress. You're feeling bad, increasing your stress, increasing the behavior, increasing the amount of badness that you feel. And you just end up getting caught in this loop. And look, trust me, it is no fun. I did it for 20 years. It really is no fun at all.
Yeah. But to think that it will lessen the stress, I mean, what a paradox, right? You felt it the day before. You already you're feeling like you're not at your 100% at 100%, and then you're drinking again. Surely you must know something must be causing it. It's either your sleep is being disrupted, and why is that? The root cause, I guess it's finding the root cause of it. I mean, again, it's easier said than done because I am now that I am actually going to the space of therapy. So we work with the subconscious mind. So it's actually all in the subconscious, the one that's driving the our activities. Most of I don't know what's the statistics, but definitely 98 or 90% of what we do every day. So it is so people know alcohol is bad if taken excessively, but still, it is still there. Organizations profit from it, you know? And it's not just in the Western culture, it's also in Asia. Japanese, Chinese, Filipinos, like, yeah. Malaysia, well, Malaysia is a Muslim country, so no, it's not big, but of course there are people who sit down and get the dealings sorted through alcohol. I mean, no alcohol, no deals. That's kind of like the I wouldn't say mantra, but a prerequisite.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting that you mentioned the subconscious, and I absolutely think one of the real keys to sort of rebalancing your relationship with alcohol is making the subconscious conscious and actually understanding what underpins your behavior. So a lot of people don't realize how much their beliefs dictate their actions. Whenever there was an election recently where I live, and it was this thing called the Police and Crime Commissioner, which is just a fairly recent, quite made up thing that nobody really cares about. And where I live, the political makeup is such that there is only one guy that's ever going to get elected. So nobody cares, and it's a foregone conclusion. So why would you vote? But I voted because I believe quite strongly that voting is important, even if the outcome is kind of already done. You should go and register your vote. That is important. That's a core part of my beliefs. And I guess, a lot of the listeners are going to be like that. They're going to be nodding away going, yeah, it's important to vote. And, they vote because they believe voting is important. And I think what we don't kind of recognize is the amount of beliefs that we have around alcohol. Most people believe that alcohol helps you to socialize, that it helps you to deal with stress, that it helps you to make friends, that it helps you dating. A lot of people believe other things around creativity. And, there are a huge amount of beliefs about alcohol. And what I think is really helpful is if you can take those kind of subconscious beliefs that are driving your actions, bring them into the light and examine them, say, are they true? Is alcohol, this happens to me all of the time. I'll say to people, so, why do you drink? And they go, oh, yeah, it helps me deal with my stress. But actually, now you come to mention it, Duncan, I get quite stressed by drinking. And it's like, yeah, you do, don't you? It's like a major cause of stress in your life. So it's not true. So, you examine those beliefs, ask whether they're true, but then go a step further and ask, are they serving you? Is that drinking getting you closer to being the human being you want to be, the business person, the parent, the runner, whatever's important to you? Is it helping you achieve that goal? Because the chances are it's doing the exact opposite. So I think once you've made the sort of subconscious conscious and really examined it, it makes changing your behaviors so much easier.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow, thank you for the explanation. I love it. Yes. Why the harm from drinking is not found at the extremes, Duncan?
So a lot of people, that is their basic view of drinking. There are two camps. There's people who have a problem with drinking, and they usually don't have jobs. They usually don't have houses. They usually, don't have driving licenses or families or any of those kind of things. They're like, they live on the streets and drink alcohol out of a paper bag. They're the ones with the problem. And then every other drinker is absolutely fine. Thank you very much. We're having fun. Shut up, Duncan. But the truth of the matter is it's far more nuanced than that. You have obviously people who don't drink, and then you have people who drink in this low risk, high pleasure area like your good self, like probably about 20-25% of the population. It depends where you go. In Asia, there's going to be more people that don't drink and more people that drink at this kind of low level. But once you get above that low risk, high pleasure level, you get into the kind of medium risk drinkers, and there are a lot of them. And then you get to the severe risk drinkers, and honestly, most of the severe risk drinkers are actually quite successful people. The people that drink heaviest are the ones that earn the most. Alcohol is a problem of success. So our view of what problem drinking looks like is totally and utterly wrong. People with a drinking problem are far more likely to be running the company that you work for rather than cleaning the floors. Yes, there are those problem drinkers, and yes, they do a lot of harm to themselves. They actually do quite a lot of harm to society as well. Alcohol costs society a huge amount of money every year, but there's not that many of them. There's too many of them, but there's not huge amounts of them. There's huge amounts of these people that are in the middle, drinking at the medium risk level. And true, they're not causing as much harm to society, and they're not causing as much harm to themselves, and they're not causing as much of a risk to themselves. But because there's so many of them, that is where the majority of the harm lies. It actually lies in the middle. It's a bell curve, and with bell curve, it's always the big bit in the middle. And that's where a lot of people are sitting in terms of alcohol consumption, in this medium risk area where they are only doing a medium amount of damage. They're only, causing a medium amount of impact. They're only reducing their productivity by a moderate amount, but they are still reducing their productivity, reducing the effectiveness of their relationships. They're jeopardizing their health. So that's why we want to work so much with businesses and organizations, because it gives us an opportunity to actually get to those people in the middle where most of the harm is being done. Don't get me wrong, I work a lot with the people who are at the other end, the severe drinkers. And I do enjoy working with them. It's enormously rewarding helping people, get free from that misery and that pain. But actually, if we really want to change society, we've got to get into the middle. And that's what I'm so pleased that businesses and organizations are allowing us the opportunity to really do that and help those people find a better way, getting them down to the low risk, high pleasure drinking area, or helping them to take a break and reassess their drinking, whether they want to go back or whether they just want to kind of, focus on being a parent or being a runner or being an employee or whatever's important to them, and actually make the most of that with a clear head and a load of energy and a happy heart.
Wow. Well, I wanted to ask you, what's your step-by-step process like? So when you go into corporation, that that are calling you up for help, just like you mentioned a couple of seconds ago. How do you do like a case study for
So we will
illustration?
typically have kind of a kickoff event where I take a lot of time explaining that I am not the Grinch. I am not here to steal Christmas. I'm not here to take your alcohol away. I want you to enjoy more, enjoy it more. You know, if you want to drink, that's fine with me, but I want you to actually enjoy it and get the most out of it. So it's about, you know, setting expectations and telling people, you know, that you know, we are not here to ruin their fun. Quite the opposite. But then we also we work with a lot of amazing speakers, and they all have a very healthy relationship with alcohol. Some of them don't drink. Some of them have very controlled drinking patterns. So we work with a lot of really exciting people like Paralympians and you know, adventurers and you know, business gurus and people like that. And they come along and they tell their story, you know, in a wonderful, magical kind of a way, and then they point out, you know, how alcohol and their relationship with alcohol has changed and how that has helped them to succeed. And there's some enormously powerful speakers out there. So we tend to run these kind of kickoff events where we help people to understand what we're actually trying to do, and then we do various educational events. So we can do stuff about high performance. We can do stuff about emotional intelligence. We can do stuff about neurodiversity, equality, and inclusion, and things like that. We can do specific training for managers, for mental health first aiders, for champions, for senior management. So we've got a whole suite of programs that we can deliver, and we often like to have this kind of coaching element where we use a very quick kind of friendly survey that people fill out that gives us a bit of an idea of where their drinking is, and then if they're in that medium risk area, then we can help them get back into the low risk, high
High
pleasure
pleasure.
drinking area. Or if they are if they've got a little bit further down the line, then we can either manage them into an employee assistance program, or we do executive sober coaching. So, you know, we've got lots of different strategies depending on where people are, and then we like to wrap it all up. You know, we work with a certification authority that provide this alcohol safe workspace certificate accreditation, and you know, usually our programs will build to that accreditation being awarded, and then we have a big old party and we show people how much fun you can have at an
With
alcohol-free party,
yeah,
and we bring
alcohol.
on amazing drinks. You know, there are some really high quality alcohol-free beers out there, some amazing craft beers. There are a couple of amazing alcohol-free champagne companies that we work with that just like blow my socks off. I every time I try it, I go, oh my god, this, I've picked up the wrong glass and this is actually champagne. And we also work with a load of people who do the amazing mixology, and they do the mocktails, and you know, we just
Wow.
generally have a lot of fun and
Mm-hmm.
show, you know, have a celebration and show people how easy it is to have a celebration. In fact, there's a company that one of my friends is working with who has just announced that their annual award ceremony is going to be completely alcohol free. And I was
Wow.
saying to him that I think that is so brilliant, because I've emceed quite a few award ceremonies that have been, shall we say, quite alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's always such a pain because you get heckled so much by these drunken idiots, usually from sales, and it's just like, it's such a downer as an MC. Whereas when you're with a sober audience, it's always quite good fun. If you do the same group of people at the start of the day before they've started drinking, you have a lot of fun. But yeah,
Yeah.
so it's great to see all of that change coming up.
I have yet to attend a ceremony. I mean, of course, if it's a Muslim gathering, then of course, obviously no. But then if it's like an open one where we have Muslim here, usually they'll respect and say, okay, we'll take the alcohol, or this section is an alcohol. But actually, that's a good one. I mean, I've seen non-alcoholic drinks, but like you said, craft beer, but 0% alcohol. It's not that big here yet, but I think that should be, we should be steering towards that. Oh, yeah, and to be honest, I don't know, people in Malaysia will be listening to this podcast when this airs could start to think like, okay, maybe we should take this a notch higher.
Yeah,
remove
I mean,
alcohol.
I think that events, if you want to serve alcohol at an event, that's fine, but it shouldn't be the default. It
Yeah,
should
yeah,
be,
yeah. I
it's
think you're
there,
right. The
but
key
as
here
you
is
walk,
it shouldn't be the default.
yeah,
Yeah.
as you walk through the door, somebody should offer you a drink. And if that drink, they're offering you that drink, it should be non-alcoholic. I think that the drinks on the table should all be non-alcoholic. As you walk through the door, should be offered a nice, refreshing glass of something exciting. An adult, nobody wants warm orange juice or a Coke or something like that, because we're not
Ale,
kids, are we?
ginger ale.
So a nice grown-up, adult, sophisticated, refreshing drink as you walk through the door. Perfect. If you want to have a drink, if you want to drink alcohol, that's fine. Look, the bar's over there. You can go and get yourself a drink. But the default is going to be alcohol free, and that's so much more inclusive. And I think the part of the
Mm-hmm.
world that you're in, that is so important, because as you
Yeah.
rightly say, Muslims don't drink, and even in the UK there are a lot of Muslims, and I think
Yeah.
we need to start thinking more about the reasons why people don't drink. And I know it depends where you come from in East Asia, but genetically about 30 to 50% of people from East Asia lack one of the enzymes that helps you break down the byproducts of alcohol consumption, which gives you that kind of flush
The
response.
the the red flushes. Yeah.
Exactly, which makes drinking alcohol very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So a lot of the people there, even if they're not Muslim, they may well not be drinking for
Mm-hmm.
very good reasons. And then add on top of that, all of the physical and mental health reasons why you wouldn't drink alcohol, because it affects your medication, or because the condition that you have, it's very counterproductive to drink alcohol. And then on top of that, high performers these days, more and more of them are not drinking. If you look at the statistics around young people, more and more of them are saying no to alcohol, and they're saying they're never going to drink alcohol, primarily because they're focused on other things. So a lot of the time they're now focused on education. And in a lot of parts of the world, it's very expensive to go and get a degree. When I was young, in the UK at least, it was pretty cheap. The government paid for most of it, so you could just go to university for 3 years, drink and muck about, and it didn't really matter. But now you come out of university and you're like 30, 50,000 pounds in debt.
Yeah.
You can't muck about if that's the debt you're
And then
coming
go
out with.
spend money on alcohol.
Yeah, you have to actually work. You have to justify that. And more kids have woken up to this fact. And also they're starting to see, their heroes, their sports stars. So many very successful footballers, Cristiano Ronaldo, for example. He doesn't drink alcohol because he knows it's incompatible with elite sporting performance. Same with Lewis Hamilton,
Mm-hmm.
Tom Brady, Novak Djokovic. So all of their heroes are really starting to kind of dial back the drinking. In fact, Taylor Swift was talking recently about how she no longer drinks when she's on tour. And she's on tour like all of the time.
Yeah.
Because I've never been to a Taylor Swift concert, just like
Me too.
putting it out there. But I rather suspect there's a lot of dancing, there's a lot of singing, and it's very physical and it's very hard work. And if you
Yeah.
want to maintain that elite performance like she does, then just drinking it's got no part in it. And so many more young people and so many more of the top talent in all of the areas are starting to see that, and businesses need to wake up to that fact, or they're not going to be able to recruit the best.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Thank you for that. Why it is sad that stopping drinking is the one area in life that isn't dominated by men.
I know. I mean, we get everywhere, don't we? But unfortunately, the alcohol-free space is largely dominated by women. And there are some amazing women out there doing amazing work, and I've got an awful lot of time for them. And what they talk about really resonates with me now, but what I figure is that when I was drinking, it wouldn't really have resonated with me, and I wouldn't really have understood it. And this is a big problem because men are typically more likely to develop problems with drinking, somewhere between 2 and 3 times more likely for a man to have a problem with drinking than a woman. And if you look at the World Health Organization statistics, they're pretty bleak. So if the two of us went to a bar, on average, I would be drinking 3 drinks and you would be drinking 1 drink.
Yeah.
I'd rather suspect maybe neither of us would be drinking, but that's it. 75% of the alcohol that's produced worldwide is drunk by men.
Mhm.
In fact, the average man drinks
Wow,
19.4
65%.
litres of pure alcohol a year, which equates to about 3.5 bottles of wine a week, which is a lot. In fact, that is far too much. You know, men are more likely to have a problem with drinking, but in general, men are rubbish and we're less likely to ask for help, aren't we? So what we need is we need more men talking about, you know, their own experience with alcohol and sharing their stories and, you know, providing hope and helping their brothers out there. And it is something that I'm on a little bit of a crusade about. In fact, you know, my last book was called Real Men Quit, and it was exactly written to kind of help solve that problem, because, you know, there are great books out there about stopping drinking, but if they don't include sports and Star Wars and, you know, the Terminator and some really bad jokes, then blokes just aren't going to engage with them, are
So I'm guessing you have included that in your book. So I
they?
need
Yeah,
to get
lots of
a
James Bond
copy of that.
references.
Okay, I am so curious about this question, but I'm gonna ask you. I don't know what's the context, but I'm gonna ask you what the heck is Morris dancing and why does he still do it?
So Morris dancing is a form of English folk dancing. I
Okay.
don't know whether it has made it to Malaysia or not yet. I mean,
No.
we do get around. Well, maybe you could invite my side over. That would be an interesting experience, isn't it?
Maybe.
So to give you a kind of idea of it, if you picture your sort of like traditional rural British, you know, village green or something like that, and
Right.
we're all dressed. We wear white trousers, white shirts. There's lots of ribbons going on, lots of brightly coloured ribbons, bells around our ankles, some hats with flowers, and then we dance around to traditional English music, and it's very. Yeah, it's a very, very traditional English thing to do. And when I started dancing, I was drinking alcohol, and it is often associated with alcohol. I mean, it often you dance outside a pub, and there are. I have met quite a few heavy drinkers through Morris dancing, and you know, when I started, it was like, oh, this is great. These guys go out drinking at lunchtime. You know, this is brilliant. This give me an excuse, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So when I stopped drinking, I was a little bit worried, and I thought to myself, well, you know, am I going to enjoy dancing? Is it going to work? Is it going to be any fun? But I thought, well, I've been doing it for a while, and I like the guy, so I'll go along a few times, and I'll see how it works out. And I was incredibly surprised that actually I really enjoyed myself because I enjoy the dancing. The dancing is actually quite good fun. I like the
Mm-hmm.
guys I dance with. You know, they're good guys. Actually, one of the things that I noticed was they don't all drink as much as I used to drink. Some of them don't drink that much. They just don't shout about it. And, you know, I like the tradition of it. I like the sense of continuity, you know, being tied to something that's very much older than myself. I like the places that we dance. We go and dance in some interesting places. In a couple of months, I'm going to be dancing outside Westminster Abbey in the centre of London.
Wow.
And, you know,
No.
you get an
No.
amazing crowd there. You know, it's like fantastic. You just like start dancing and you are
Westminster
suddenly
Abbey.
thousands of
Really?
tourists.
Oh,
It's
wow.
brilliant. So, you know, what we do is really exciting and the sense of community is brilliant. And, you know, being a part of my community and being a part of something bigger, it's all so important. And what I came to realize was that, you know, that's what I enjoy about dancing. It's all of that stuff. It never had
It's not
anything to do with
do with
beer.
it.
It never had anything to do with the alcohol.
Wow. Wow. What a story. Thank you, Duncan. So what is next for you besides the Morris dancing in Westminster Abbey?
So I mean, I'm working very hard at the moment to, you know, increase the amount of organisations and businesses that we're working with because I think there's so much potential to do some real good in the world. That absolutely excites me. We've got a great team of coaches, trainers, change management experts, and it's getting bigger every day. So that's super exciting. My next book is going to be called Flat Pack Sober, and
Mm,
that's more about what you need to do to stay sober because
sustain
actually
it. Mm.
yeah, one of the things that I noticed is that stopping drinking is it's actually pretty easy. I
It's
have to
like
kind of caveat
muscle. Huh?
that
It's like
if you do it
keeping your
right.
six pack.
Hmm?
It's like keeping your six packs. Like you can get that six packs, but then how do
Yeah,
you maintain it for the next decade.
Yeah, that is a very good analogy. So actually just, getting stopped and not drinking for a month or two, it's not that hard, but
Exactly.
it's maintaining it in the long run. And one of the things that people don't tend to talk about in the sober world is that you feel better when you stop drinking. Of course you do. You stop putting a load of poison into your body. Of course you feel better. But as, the weeks and months progress, what happens is all of the stuff that you were ignoring when you were trying to drink, when you were
Mm,
drinking, starts to kind of bubble up. And whether that's procedural stuff about your job, bills, where you live, your
yeah.
car, whatever, whether that's stuff about the relationships that you have, whether that's stuff about, things that have happened to you in the past, unprocessed trauma, all starts to bubble up. And that can have a really serious knock-on effect if you aren't aware that that's going to happen and you don't have a little bit of a strategy for dealing with it.
Mhm.
So I've been interviewing some of the sober superstars. We've done nearly 50 interviews so far, and we're nowhere near stopping. And, like talking to them about what is it that helped them to stay sober? What is the kind of things that they do? And there are a lot of patterns emerging about connection and community, about, being able to manage the situations where you might be a little bit tempted to drink. There's also a lot about emotional intelligence, and there's also a lot of stuff that we would call recovery capital, which is the kind of the nuts and bolts of, do you have a job? Do you have solid relationships? Do you have a good diet? All of that sort of stuff. So that's all kind of emerging, and we're kind of pushing it here and there, and crunching the numbers and doing what almost might be called proper grown-up sciencey research. And, it's all going to eventually percolate into a book, which I'm super excited about.
Wow, another milestone for you, Duncan. Rooting for you. Okay, we're gonna pivot to a self-worth question, because my podcast is all about self-worth. And the question for you today is, in your opinion, seeking external help, such as therapy or counseling, can be beneficial for addressing self-worth issues. How can individuals find the right resources and support for their needs?
Yeah, well, I mean, first off, I make you absolutely right. I think there is a huge connection between self-worth and actually seeking support and help, because you've got to consider yourself worth the change.
Mhm.
You've got to consider yourself
Yes.
worth the effort. It's so incredibly important. And a lot of the people that I work with, that is a big part of what we do, is say, you actually deserve something better than what you've got at the moment, and helping them to really see that. So that's such an important point. In terms of seeking help, I'm going to quote Bruce Lee badly, but basically he said, take what works, discard what doesn't.
Mm.
And he talked about learning a lot of different martial arts, and I think there's a reasonably good analogy for that and the therapeutic environment. There are a lot of different approaches, and
Yeah.
one of the problems that you get is people get a bit dogmatic about their own approach. They will
Mm,
tell you that this is the only approach, whereas what they
mm.
mean is this is the approach that works for me.
For me. Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that's the key thing to understand, that if anybody is telling you that there is only one approach, they are talking about themselves. They're not talking about you. So go out there and try some things. There's a broad range. I mean, if you just look at therapy, and I think help is much broader than that. So you could talk about
Yeah.
coaching, you could talk about pastoral care from a priest or somebody in a religious context. But just in terms of therapy, to very much simplify it, you can do cognitive therapy, which is talking therapy, which would help you discuss the issues that are there. You can do physical therapy, which will help you to get to grips with the emotions and the feelings as they reside in your body and how that connects to your mind. So you're kind of pushing up from the body rather than pushing down from the head. Now, that is a totally different approach, and a totally valid approach, an approach that sometimes I've met people who have done a lot of cognitive therapy and it really hasn't worked for them. And then they've done some sort of more physical body-based therapy, like yoga or massage or Reiki or something like that. And it's actually had a huge impact on them. And they've like, if only I'd discovered this sooner. So, there's those two things. And then there's more and more evidence suggesting that things like pranic therapy, energy therapy, things that are connected to breathing, that can have a really huge impact on it. Now, there are a lot of people that will tell you that's all just woo-woo nonsense. And that if that is their opinion, that is not cast iron fact. I have met people who have found crystals to be an enormously important part of their sobriety journey. It's not even being close to being a part of my sobriety journey, but I'm not going to tell anyone how to get sober and how to live their own life. And if that kind of energy therapy stuff, if that really appeals to you, if that makes a lot of sense to you, go with it, try a few different options, and if they work, do them some more. And if they don't work, smile, say thanks very much, move on to the next thing. But don't feel that just because some authority, self-proclaimed authority on Instagram tells you that this is how you should get well, that is not the case. There are an awful lot of different ways out there. And I know it is hard just to say you've got to find your own way, but you have got to find your own way. And if anybody wants to discuss, in greater depth how these resources all fit together and, want to be pointed in the right direction, I am always happy to try and help people navigate and find their own path, because that's ultimately what we want. We want people to get well. We want people to get happy. We want people to live their best lives. And whether they do that with me or whether they do that with somebody else, I don't care, so long as they're doing it.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. What is your heart's greatest wish, Duncan?
So I really wish that, alcohol wasn't the default. I really wish that, you could turn up to a bar and 80% of the options would be alcohol free. And then people would look at you a little bit funny if you ordered something with alcohol in it. And, they're just like, if most people were sober, and the people that wanted to drink, they can drink, but just do it at that low risk, high pleasure area. So, in essence, I just really wish we could remove the harm that alcohol does to the world, because it is massive. So I think just what we talked about today, we have only touched the tip of the iceberg. I think most people don't quite realize how pervasive alcohol is. It's almost like you're born. It's like you get poured into a giant glass.
Do you have a mantra that you live by? So
I am a big fan of mantras and repeating phrases and things like that. I use quite a few of them. When I get up in the morning, I tend to shout, "Let's rock the day." That's one of my favorite, because I still think I am a rock star. One of the ones, "Happy Trails," is one of the ones that I use quite a lot. That's when when I'm driving, and I was on a road called the M25, which is the London Orbital, which is the big road that goes around London, and it is full of really awful drivers, and they just I like constantly, I'm like, why did you do that? And it used to really, really annoy me. And now it kind of like, I have an emotional reaction to it. And then I shout "Happy Trails" and I smile at them and I kind of wish them loving kindness and good luck. And I just kind of let that go. So that's such an important one. That made my journey home yesterday, actually, and my journey to where I was going in London. It made it a lot more pleasant, allowed me to concentrate on my audiobook rather than fuming about people who honestly don't even know that I'm annoyed with them. So
yeah, where you're expending your energy on them, which is totally rubbish to begin with, because they're just driving, but you're the ones like, oh my god, why are you doing this? Why are you driving? Why are you out here?
No effect on them, no impact on their behavior, just ruins your day. So finding ways to do that. And I mean, honestly, mantras are at the heart of what I do. I mean, the reason why Real Men Quit is called Real Men Quit is because I want guys to start shouting that. Not simply just kind of free advertising, but I think what it does is it's kind of a celebration, and it's kind of a reaffirmation of your identity. And those two things, celebration and identity, are so important to behavior change. If you've got another hour, I can explain the whole system to you.
I have to invite you on for another episode.
Well, look, I hope it comes across, but I love talking about this kind of stuff, and I'd happily do it all day. So yeah, let's do it.
Season 2. Okay, is there anything that keeps you up at night, or do you sleep well?
Honestly, I sleep really, really well. About 6 months ago, I was working with somebody who has an adult diagnosis of ADHD, attention hyperactivity disorder. We talked a lot about dopamine and stimulation, and part of the problem with alcohol is it does stimulate a lot of dopamine, and that can be particularly problematic in people with ADHD. And the way the conversation was going, they were happily getting through the drinking bit and they were happily getting towards sobriety, but it was obvious to me that they probably needed to rebalance some of the other things in their life that were causing problems in terms of stimulation, such as their electronic devices, smoking, drinking coffee, even the way that they were working, just checking their emails at all hours and things like that. So it was in the back of my mind that at some point we were going to have this conversation about a stimulation fast or a dopamine detox, or call
Yeah,
it
we
what you
need
like.
to.
And the thing is, I've never done one of those. So, and I hate recommending stuff that I've never tried because I just feel like a bit of a fraud. So I decided to do this dopamine detox. My diet was already pretty good. I don't eat a lot of junk food, but there was a little bit in the corners, so I totally cut that out. So I eat very little refined sugar. I was drinking possibly too much coffee, so I cut that out. And I basically turned off 90% of the apps on my phone. I didn't delete them. I put a lock on them, and then my
Yeah.
wife's got the code, and I'm only
Oh,
allowed it on special occasions. So there's no social media, there's no WhatsApp, there's no message services, there's no emails on my phone anymore. It is
notifications, right?
basically, I can play audiobooks and I can use it for sat nav, checking my bank, and amazingly, making phone calls. Who knew you could use phones for making phone calls? And that is all I use my phone for. And I decided to do that for a month, and I got kind of a bit more regimented about when I work. So I only check social media and emails on my laptop now, and I don't try not to use my laptop after sort of 6 o'clock. So I got a lot more regimented with all of these things, and my my sleep was fairly good beforehand, but it actually improved, and now I sleep like a baby. Actually, I don't sleep like a baby because obviously they wake up every 3 hours screaming, but I sleep really, really well. And I do a lot of podcasts, and I do a lot of podcasts with a lot of people in the world. And I much prefer Malaysia. The
Aw.
time difference is it's so much more pleasant. It works out much better because we can do it during the day. Whereas a lot of the time with people in America, they'll want to record in
Yes,
the evening. And
that's
for
right.
the evening in America is the night for me. But
Yeah.
they've got big audiences, or they're on a subject that I really love. So I actually do get up in the middle of the night once or twice a
Oh,
month to do
yes.
podcasts. So I'll sleep for a couple of hours, stay up for an hour or two, do this podcast, and then go back to bed. And I think most people probably couldn't do that and still function at a high level. But I did that earlier this week. I got up at 5:30 yesterday, and I honestly, I don't even feel at all tired today. Like, my sleep is rock solid. Um,
Wow.
the I don't say that to boast. I really want people to understand that you have so much control over your energy levels. You've got to take it back, and you've got to
Yeah.
look at things that are impacting your energy and your focus, like alcohol, like cigarettes, like caffeine, like your diet, like your phone, like the way your boss phones you at 9 o'clock at night. All of those things, they have a massive impact on your stress levels, and therefore how you sleep at night.
Wow. Dopamine detox. There's so many things to take away from there. Wow. Okay. If you could create a quote right now, Duncan, for you to leave to the audience listening and the world as your legacy, what would it be?
There's nowhere you can be that isn't where you're meant to be, but that's the Beatles. With a little bit of John Lennon copyright infringement there. But you know what? I think that is such a great message. We often feel like we're in the wrong place, like we haven't achieved enough, like we haven't got where we want to be. But
Yeah.
honestly, you are where you are meant to be. You just got to
Yes.
start walking a little bit more towards where you want to be. And then
Mm-hmm.
when you get to where you want to be, you'll look back and you'll realize that where you are at the moment wasn't a failure. It was a signpost on the road to where you were meant to be.
Very well said. Thank you.
Oh,
So
I nicked it
Duncan,
off John Lennon. I mean, it was always going to be good, wasn't it?
no brainer, you're gonna pick that one up anyway. So, Duncan, but how can people reach out to you?
So I think what I'd love to offer your listeners is a little gift. So if they
Ooh,
put getover.co.uk, no, getover.uk into the internet, that'll take you to a little bit of my website where you can download my first book, Get Over Indulgence, which is kind of like my journey from, rubbish health to happiness. A little bit about what I did, but mostly it's a nice little story, a nice little adventure, and it's quite short as well, which is a lot of people like that. So you can, put in getover.uk. You can then download the PDF or the Kindle version, or you can download the audio if you can stand listening to me for 3 hours and 45 minutes. And I'll apologize now for the silly voices. So download that at just
increase the
getover.uk.
speed. So that's like 1.5 hours now.
Well,
No.
funnily enough, I was listening back to some of the recordings that I'd done, and I was listening to them on double speed, and I speak quite quickly. And I was interviewing this amazing lady called Erie, and she speaks quite quickly. And the two of us on double speed, it was amazing. It was so funny. Anyway, so getover.uk, download the book. That's my gift to you. But if you want to find out anything more about me,
Yeah.
that is actually a link to my website, so you can see. We got some surveys to help you get you, an idea about where your drinking is. Got a ton of content on there, links to the work that we do, and links to all of the socials as well. So if you need anything, please do get in touch. I am always more than happy to.
Brilliant. Wow. Thank you, Duncan. So, and there you have it, guys. You heard it from the man himself, Duncan Bhaskaran Brown. Before we close off, I would like to thank you, Duncan, personally for the work that you're doing for the world and for advancing every step of the way despite the challenges, creating trails for those that will come after you. This has been that one podcast with that controversial name, You're Worthless. Read that again. The juxtaposition of your very soul. If now for the listeners, if you find yourself thinking that you are worthless, you are not alone. But more importantly, ask yourself a level deeper, if I am worthless, then why the heck am I here? It is because your soul have chosen to be here energetically, all the way from the ethers, and for that reason itself, you are worthy and you are enough. This has been Duncan Bhaskaran Brown, my guest of the day, and Nick Nieras, your host, signing off.